There are over 1 billion cows on this planet raised for food, 9 billion chickens slaughtered every single year just in the United States, sheep, pigs, goats, rabbits, deer, entire industries built around eating animals that eat plants. Now try to name the last time you saw lion steak on a menu, or wolf, or eagle, or shark. Outside of a fin soup you probably shouldn't be eating anyway. Humans have farmed, hunted, and eaten almost every herbivore on Earth at some point in history. But predators? We've almost never done it. Not at scale, not as a staple. Across nearly every culture, on every continent, humans converged on the same unspoken rule. Eat the plant eaters. Leave the meat eaters alone. That's strange if you think about it. A wolf and a cow are both just meat, both made of muscle and fat and protein. So why does one show up on every dinner table on the planet, and the other basically never does? Start with the math, because the math alone almost settles this. In 1942, ecologist Raymond Lindemann worked out something that would later be called the 10% rule. At every step up a food chain, roughly 90% of the energy gets lost, burned off as heat, spent on movement, wasted digesting. Only about 10% makes it to the next level. So a field of grass might produce 100 pounds of energy. That supports maybe 10 pounds of deer, which supports 1 pound of wolf. To raise a single pound of predator meat, you need 10 pounds of prey animal underneath it, which itself needed 100 pounds of plants underneath that. Predators are, by design, the most expensive meat on the planet to produce. Farming lions for food would be like farming animals that eat other farmed animals. The math never works. To put that in perspective, raising a cow to slaughter weight already takes years of grain and grazing land most people never think about. Raising a predator big enough to eat would mean raising and losing 10 times that amount of prey animal just to keep one carnivore alive long enough to grow. No civilization in history has ever had that kind of surplus to throw away on a single food source. The energy simply isn't there to spend. But cost isn't the only problem. There's something building up inside predator meat that has nothing to do with taste or economics. It's called biomagnification. Toxins in the environment, mercury, lead, industrial chemicals, don't disappear as they move up a food chain. They concentrate. A small fish absorbs a small amount of mercury from the water. A bigger fish eats hundreds of those small fish and absorbs all of it. A shark eats hundreds of those bigger fish and absorbs even more. By the time you reach the top predator, you're eating a creature that has spent its entire life accumulating everyone else's poison. This is exactly why pregnant women today are told to avoid shark, swordfish, and king mackerel, not because those fish are unhealthy on their own, because they sit at the top of a chain that's been quietly collecting toxins for years. The same pattern nearly wiped out bald eagles in the 20th century. The pesticide DDT washed into rivers, was absorbed by algae, concentrated in fish, and then concentrated again in the eagles that ate those fish. By the 1960s, DDT levels in apex predators were high enough to thin their eggshells until the eggs collapsed under their own mother's weight. Bald eagle populations in the continental United States dropped to under 1,000 nesting pairs before DDT was banned in 1972. That's what a lifetime at the top of a food chain does to an animal's tissue. Whether the toxin is mercury, lead, or a pesticide, humans sprayed decades earlier. And this problem isn't new. Arctic explorers learned it the hard way. Sled dogs across the Arctic have known for generations never to touch polar bear liver. Early 20th century expedition teams didn't get the memo. Members of Douglas Mawson's 1911 Antarctic expedition ate husky liver out of desperation and came down with violent headaches, peeling skin, and organ failure. The cause was later identified as hypervitaminosis A, vitamin A poisoning. Polar bear and husky liver store such an extreme concentration of vitamin A that a single meal can be lethal to a human. Indigenous Arctic communities had known to avoid it for centuries. Science just caught up to why. Then there's what predator meat actually does inside the body of the animal that produced it. Prey animals graze. Predators sprint, stalk, and fight for every meal. That kind of chronic physical stress floods their muscles with cortisol and adrenaline, and drains the glycogen that normally makes meat tender when an animal is calm at slaughter. The result is meat that's tougher, gamier, and often carries a strong, musky flavor from testosterone-related compounds concentrated in the tissue. Hunters who've eaten mountain lion or wolf frequently describe it the same way. Edible in a survival situation, not something you'd choose. There's a disease risk too. Predators eat the sick, the old, and the weakest members of a population. That means they're also eating whatever parasites and pathogens those animals were carrying. Trichinosis, a parasitic infection once common in undercooked bear and wild boar, spreads specifically through predator and scavenger meat. Wildlife biologists have long flagged carnivore meat as carrying a dramatically higher parasite load than herbivore meat for exactly this reason. A predator isn't just eating flesh, it's eating everything that was already wrong with its prey. Now, the rule isn't absolute. History has exceptions, and they prove the point rather than break it. Bear meat has been eaten across parts of Scandinavia, Russia, and North America for centuries, but almost always in small quantities, and almost always cooked until it's essentially sterilized. Lion meat occasionally shows up in parts of Africa during extreme famine when starving communities had no other option left. In nearly every documented case, humans only turned to predator meat when every safer, cheaper, plant-eating alternative had already run out. That's not a counterexample. That's the rule confirming itself. Predator meat has always been the last resort, never the first choice. Even today, the exception is rare and controversial. South Africa has a legal lion farming industry, but it exists almost entirely to sell lion bones into traditional medicine markets in parts of Asia, not to put lion meat on dinner tables. Conservation groups have condemned the practice for years, and it remains one of the only serious attempts anywhere in the world to farm a predator at scale. The fact that it's controversial, tiny, and aimed at bones rather than meat only reinforces how firmly the rest of the world has avoided going down that road. And then culture caught up with biology and made the rule official. The dietary laws in Leviticus explicitly forbid eating birds of prey and clawed carnivores, listing eagles, vultures, and hawks by name. Islamic dietary law draws the same line, prohibiting animals that hunt with fangs or talons. Across cultures with no contact with each other, from ancient Israel to the Arabian Peninsula to indigenous hunting traditions across North America, the same boundary kept appearing independently. Eat the grazer, spare the hunter. Some anthropologists think this wasn't only about safety. Predators were also feared, respected, sometimes worshipped. You don't eat the animal you've built a religion around. You don't eat the creature whose skull sits on your chief's headdress or whose image guards your temple gates. Across dozens of unrelated civilizations, the lion, the eagle, the wolf, and the bear kept showing up as symbols of power, kingship, and divinity. It's hard to serve dinner out of a god. So the answer isn't just one thing. It's biology stacking on top of chemistry stacking on top of culture, all pointing the same direction. Predator meat costs too much energy to produce. It carries too much accumulated toxin. It tastes worse, breaks down worse, and carries more disease. And on top of all of that, we spent thousands of years turning the animals at the top of the food chain into symbols instead of meals. Every ecosystem on Earth runs on the same quiet arithmetic. Energy flows up, and less survives the climb at every step. Humans didn't invent the rule that predators don't get eaten. We just noticed it over and over in every corner of the world and built our plates around it. The wolf was never on the menu. The math decided that a long time ago.